After Christmas, something inside Gemini changes. It's not dramatic, it doesn't explode, it doesn't ask for attention, it simply sinks. The world moves on quickly. People go back to routines. Social media fills with smiles, leftovers, memories, laughter. But inside Gemini, there's a quiet exhaustion that doesn't have a name, and that's exactly why it hurts. Gemini often asks themselves, why do I feel like this? Nothing bad happened. I should feel happy. I should feel grateful. Indeed. But emotions don't respond to logic. And Gemini lives exactly in that place where logic and emotion collide. Christmas is emotionally intense for everyone, but for Gemini, it's different. Because Gemini doesn't just experience Christmas, they process it. Every conversation, every look across the table, every forced smile, every silence that says more than words. Gemini notices things others ignore. They notice tension disguised as jokes. They notice emotional distance hidden behind politeness. They notice when someone talks too much to avoid saying what really matters. And Gemini absorbs all of it, not intentionally, not consciously. It happens because Gemini's mind is always open. Mercury, their ruling planet, never truly rests. So while others celebrate, Gemini listens. While others laugh, Gemini analyzes. While others disconnect, Gemini stays mentally alert, and that's where the emotional drain begins. Christmas demands presence, but Gemini gives mental presence, not just physical. They adapt to different personalities. They shift their tone. They mirror energy. They become what the moment requires. By the end of it all, Gemini feels empty. Not because they lack emotion, but because they spent too much of it on others. This is why the days after Christmas feel heavy. The noise is gone, the expectations fade, and suddenly, Gemini feels everything they postponed feeling. The tiredness shows up late, and it's confusing, because Gemini doesn't feel sad in a traditional way. They feel drained, disconnected, foggy, like their mind is full, but their heart is tired. And no one notices, because Gemini still answers messages, still jokes, still seems okay. But inside, something is asking for rest. Real rest, not sleep, not distraction, mental silence. This is something few people understand about Gemini. They are not emotionally shallow. They are emotionally overloaded. Christmas intensifies that overload because it mixes nostalgia, expectations, family dynamics, social roles, and unspoken emotions, all at once. Gemini doesn't struggle with love. They struggle with too much emotional information at the same time. And when Christmas ends, their system crashes quietly. This is not weakness. This is sensitivity paired with intelligence. But society rarely teaches Gemini how to protect that combination. So instead of slowing down, Gemini feels guilty for feeling tired. They think they're ungrateful. They think something is wrong with them. They think they should snap out of it. But the truth is simpler and deeper. Gemini didn't rest emotionally during Christmas. They worked. They worked by listening, by adapting, by being present for everyone. And now, their inner world is asking for balance. This emotional drain is not a flaw. It's a signal. And if Gemini ignores it, it turns into silence, withdrawal, and isolation, which is exactly what we're going to talk about next. After Christmas, Gemini doesn't disappear. They withdraw, and there is a difference. Disappearing is impulsive. Withdrawing is intentional, even if Gemini doesn't fully realize it. This is the moment when people start asking questions. Why are you so quiet? Why don't you want to go out? Are you okay? You were so talkative last week. Gemini hears these questions, but rarely knows how to answer them, because silence, for Gemini, is not emptiness. It's processing. Gemini's mind is not built to shut down emotions immediately. It revisits moments, replays conversations, analyzes expressions, searches for meaning in what was said, and especially in what wasn't. After Christmas, there is suddenly space for all of that to surface. The calendar slows down, social obligations decrease, the external noise fades. And in that silence, Gemini's inner world becomes loud. This is why Gemini becomes quieter at the end of the year. Not because they are cold, not because they are distant, not because they don't care, but because they care too much and now need to reorganize themselves internally. Gemini feels emotionally fragmented after intense periods. Different versions of themselves were activated during Christmas. The listener, the mediator, the entertainer, the observer, the one who avoids conflict, the one who hides discomfort behind humor. When it's over, Gemini doesn't immediately know who they are again. So they pause, they pull back from conversations, not because they lack words, but because words feel heavy. Small talk feels exhausting. Explaining feelings feels impossible. Being on feels unnatural. Silence becomes a form of protection. In this phase, Gemini often feels misunderstood. People interpret their quietness as indifference, their absence as rejection, their distance as arrogance. But Gemini is actually trying to reconnect with themselves. This is something Gemini rarely allows during the year. They are constantly interacting, learning, adapting, shifting environments. But at the end of the year, especially after Christmas, something changes. Gemini feels the weight of time. They think about what they said yes to but wanted to say no, connections that drained them, conversations that stayed unfinished versions of themselves they performed to be accepted. This reflection doesn't happen loudly. It happens in silence, and this silence is often lonely. Even when surrounded by people, Gemini can feel profoundly alone, because few people ask Gemini how they are, beyond surface-level curiosity. And fewer still are willing to sit with Gemini in their quiet moments without trying to fix them. So Gemini chooses solitude, not as punishment, not as escape, but as recalibration. In solitude, Gemini can finally slow their thoughts, separate others' emotions from their own, understand what truly belongs to them. This is why Gemini often feels emotionally detached at the end of the year. It's not detachment, it's emotional sorting. They are deciding, what do I carry into the next year? What do I leave behind? What no longer feels like me? This process is intense, and it requires silence. Gemini doesn't need advice during this time. They don't need pressure to cheer up. They don't need constant messages asking what's wrong. What they need is permission to be quiet without being judged. Ironically, this is also when Gemini becomes most honest with themselves. They see patterns they ignored. They recognize emotional fatigue they denied. They admit truths they postponed, and sometimes those truths hurt. Gemini may realize that certain relationships feel one-sided, that some environments suppress their authenticity, that they've been overgiving mentally and emotionally. This realization is heavy, and it cannot be rushed. That's why Gemini becomes silent, because talking before understanding would mean lying. And Gemini hates lying, especially to themselves. Gemini, if you're watching this and you feel emotionally drained after Christmas, if you feel quieter than usual, more distant, more reflective, or even strangely empty, the universe wants you to know something important. There is nothing wrong with you. You are not broken. You are not becoming cold. You're not losing your spark. You're transitioning. After Christmas, the universe pulls Gemini inward on purpose. This isn't accidental energy. It's not random emotional fatigue. It's a necessary pause before renewal. Gemini spends most of the year moving outward, mentally, socially, emotionally. You absorb information. You absorb moods. You absorb expectations, and during Christmas, that absorption intensifies. Family dynamics, unspoken emotions, old versions of yourself reappearing, memories resurfacing without permission. Even if nothing bad happened, your nervous system worked over time. So now, the universe slows you down, not to punish you, but to protect you. This silence you feel, it's the universe lowering the volume so you can hear yourself again, because Gemini, more than most signs, can lose themselves in external noise. You adapt, you mirror, you adjust, and sometimes You forget where you end and others begin. This post-Christmas phase exists to remind you. This is when the universe asks you quietly, what do you want to carry forward? What are you tired of explaining? What are you ready to stop performing? And these questions don't demand immediate answers. They require honesty. That's why your energy feels different. You're shedding mental weight, letting go of conversations that don't need to be continued, releasing emotional responsibilities that were never yours, questioning bonds that drain more than they nourish. This can feel lonely, especially if you are spending this time physically alone. And if you are, the universe sees you. Being alone during this season does not mean you are forgotten. It does not mean you failed at connection. It does not mean something is missing in you. Sometimes solitude is alignment. Sometimes being alone is the most honest place you can be. Gemini often feels guilty for wanting distance, as if needing space means being ungrateful, as if silence means rejection. But the universe does not judge your quiet. It honors it, because in this stillness, something powerful is forming: clarity. And clarity is something Gemini needs before they move forward. This phase teaches you that not everyone deserves access to your mind. Not every thought needs to be shared. Not every emotion needs an audience. Some experiences are meant to be processed privately. The universe is asking you to trust this process, even if others don't understand it. Even if you don't fully understand it yet. You don't need to force joy right now. You don't need to be festive longer than you feel. You don't need to explain your silence. What you need is rest, mental rest. This is how Gemini heals, not by stopping thoughts, but by organizing them, not by isolating forever, but by choosing who gets your energy next. And when this phase passes, because it will, something changes. Gemini doesn't return louder. They return clearer, more selective, more intentional, more emotionally aware. You will notice that your words feel sharper, your boundaries feel stronger, your tolerance for nonsense decreases. This is growth, quiet growth, the kind no one applauds, but everyone feels later. So if today you feel emotionally drained after Christmas, if you feel silent at the end of the year, if your heart feels full but tired at the same time, know this: the universe is not asking you to rush into the new year. It's asking you to arrive honestly. Take this time, honor your quiet, let your mind breathe, and remember, your silence is not emptiness, it is preparation. If this message spoke to you, if you felt seen in these words, or if you're a Gemini who needed to hear this right now, take a moment, leave a like on this video. It helps this message reach other Geminis who might be feeling the same way in silence. Comment below, I'm allowing myself to rest, or simply write what this end-of-year energy feels like for you. And if you want more messages like this, calm, honest, and aligned with Gemini's true nature, subscribe to Gemini Whispers and turn on notifications. The universe still has more to tell you, and this is only the beginning.